Hey everybody, it's Mr. Szybisty again, coming back. We're on to Unit A3 now, absolute value equations. And so now we're going to get into a little more math stuff, a little more algebra than what we were getting into the past couple with the fundamental counting principle and permutations and combinations. So this should start to look a little more familiar to you. I want to start off with a simple example, which is this. The absolute value of x equals 5. Now there are two answers. One's obvious. One could be x equals 5 because the absolute value of 5 is 5. But there's also a second possibility here. It's also possible that x could be negative 5. And the reason why the absolute value of negative 5, remember absolute value makes anything positive, is also going to be 5. So why are there two answers and why is one positive and the other negative? Well, it comes to this, back to a number line, and we're going to do a lot of work with number lines. Here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. What this actually means with a number line is absolute value means a distance. From the point 0, where are you a distance 5 away? If I count up to 5, I'm here. But there's also a distance of 5 the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because remember, distance can't be negative. That's also got a distance of 5. And so there's always a positive possibility and a negative possibility. And so that's why we're always going to have two answers. One will be positive and the other will be negative. So let's see an example of an absolute value equation that you're going to see in this class. These are just a little more complicated than this first example. So we'll call this example 1. The absolute value, 2x minus 5 equals 9. The first thing we always want to do whenever we have an absolute value equation is write the two different possibilities. One of them is positive, and the second is negative. And watch how I write this. So these are the two possibilities. These are the two equations that will help me find the correct answers, the two correct answers. So over here, we're going to solve this equation. Add 5 to both sides. These cancel. 2x is equal to 14. Then divide both sides by 2. Those cancel. X equals 7. So I know that that is one of my possibilities. Now it's time for me to work with the negative possibility. I need to, with the negative on the outside, distribute the negative sign. And what that does is it changes the sign of everything inside the parentheses. So I have negative 2x plus 5 is equal to 9. And now I solve it like a regular equation. Minus 5 on both sides. These cancel out. So negative 2x is equal to 4. And then we divide both sides by negative 2. Those cancel out. X equals negative 2. So I have my two answers. Now, with absolute value equations, there are three different ways that we're going to write our answers. This is one of the ways. You could just write x equals 7 and x equals negative 2. Another way that you could write it, and it's also absolutely correct, is write it in what's called set notation. That's where I use this thing called a squiggly brace, and I list the possibilities in the squiggly brace. 7 and negative 2. That's a second way. The third way of writing your answer is using a number line. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and negative 1, negative 2. The way that you write this answer using a number line is you put a solid dot at 7, and a solid dot at -2. That means that the two answers were 7 and -2. That's another way that we can write our answer. These are the three. So we've solved our first absolute value equation. The key points you have to remember is that every absolute value equation will always have two answers, a positive and a negative. Solve it just like you would. And there are three different ways we're going to write our answers. We're going to write it the same way every time. It's time for the next example, example 2. In example 2, we've got 1/2 x minus 3 is equal to 2. So again, because this is an absolute value equation, I know that I'm going to have two different answers. One is positive. The other is negative. Time for the one on the left. Add 3 to both sides. These cancel out. Now we've got this fraction, and I'd like to show you the way that I do fractions. I like to multiply both sides by whatever that denominator is. In this case, it's a 2. Multiply both sides by 2. The reason why is this 2 will cancel with that 2. Leaves 1x equals 10. And then if you want, you could divide by 1, or you could write x equals 10. So that's one of my answers, x equals 10. Now it's time for the negative, and I have to remember to distribute the negative sign. Negative 1/2 x plus 3 equals 2. Remember, distributing the negative changes the sign. Now, minus 3, minus 3. Those cancel out. Negative 1/2 x is equal to -1. Now, to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply both sides by the denominator, by 2. This 2 cancels with that 2, and it leaves negative 1x equals -2. The last thing I'm going to do now is divide both sides by -1. So these cancel out. X equals -2 divided by -1 is a positive 2. There's my two answers. Remember, there are other ways that we can write our answers. In set notation with squiggly braces, or using a number line. And remember, when we answer using a number line, we put a dot over the 2 and the 10. Those are our two answers. So that's a way that you can do absolute value equations. Now it's time for a you try it. So I'm going to write the question, and then I want you to pause the video and try this one on your own. The you try today is 30 minus 7x equals 4. So pause the video and give it a try. Now the two answers, and remember there's always going to be two, the two answers that we get are x equals 26 over 7 and x equals 34 over 7. And so we could write it like that. We could write it in set notation, or we could write it using a number line. We'll talk about how to write this answer using a number line next class period. But hopefully you got the right answer, and if not, take a look at your work, see if you can figure out what you did wrong, and then we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. All right, it's time for two more examples, example 3 and 4. Example 3 is 3 times the absolute value, 4w minus 1, and that's all in the absolute value. Let me pull this down for you. There you go. minus 5 equals 10. Now notice that there's all this junk around the absolute value. Here's the absolute value right here. And I want to get that all alone so that I could do the job that I was doing before. The issue is this multiplier out here and the addition. To get rid of it, we're going to do the same thing to both sides of the equation. We're going to start with the addition or subtraction, and then we'll take care of the multiplication. So the first thing is we're going to add 5 to both sides. These cancel. And then we divide by 3. Now, we could solve it just like we could solve an absolute value equation. There are 2 answers. One's positive. The other is negative. Let's start with the one on the left. Add 1 to both sides. These cancel out. And then divide both sides by 4. That's 3 over 2. 6 over 4, divide the top and the bottom by 2 to simplify the fraction. Now it's time for the one on the right, the negative possibility. Negative 4w plus 1 equals 5. Minus 1, minus 1. Cancel out. And then finally divide by negative 4, divide by negative 4. These cancel out. W equals negative 1. So this is one way to write our answer. The second way is using our squiggly braces. 3 over 2, comma negative 1. And the final way is using a number line. The 2 dots are going to go at negative 1 and 3 halves. 3 halves is also 1.5, and 1.5 is in between 1 and 2. So I'm going to put the red dot in between 1 and 2 like that. And so that's the way to write it using the number line. Time for example 4. Four minus 2, absolute value, x plus 9 equals negative 5. Again, we've got some junk around my absolute value and I want to get rid of it. And remember, I said before, get rid of the addition first, then get rid of the multiplication. In this problem, it looks a little bit different, but the number that is closest to the absolute value is the multiplication, and the number that's farther away is the addition. So I'm going to get rid of this 4, and then I'll deal with the negative 2. So I get rid of the 4 first. To get rid of that 4, I subtract 4 from both sides. 4's cancel out. I'm left with this. And now I divide both sides by negative 2. The negative 2's cancel out. Nine over 2. So now it's an absolute value equation. I know I'll have 2 answers. The first is positive. The second is negative. Here I'm going to subtract 9 on both sides. So x equals, and this would be something that we could use our calculator to figure out. But since we don't have it, I'll let you know that the answer is negative 9 halves. You can verify with your calculator when you get to school tomorrow. The second one over here is negative x minus 9 equals 9 over 2. I would add 9 to both sides. Negative x is equal to, in this case, this is 27 over 2. And then divide both sides by negative 1. X equals negative 27 over 2. So those are our answers. Remember, we can write it in set notation. Like that. Or we can write it on a number line. Negative 9 over 2 is about negative 4.5. And negative 27 over 2 is negative 13.5. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5, negative 6, negative 7, negative 8, negative 9, negative 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, negative 15. So negative 4.5 is going to be in between negative 4 and negative 5. And negative 13.5 will be in between negative 13 and negative 14. And so there's that dot. The decimal helps you place it on the number line. All right, time for a U-try. Here's our second and last U-try for the notes, and it is 2 absolute value 3x plus 1 plus 2 equals 10. Pause the video and give this one a try. I'll give you the answers in just a second. The correct answers that we would get would be x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 5 over 3. We'll take a look next class period how to do that. Hopefully you got it right, and if you did, congratulations. We just have one more thing I want to look at. Take a look at this equation. I'm going to call this interesting. Before I do any work with this equation, this is very interesting because I'm saying that an absolute value is equal to something negative. But if you remember from the very beginning, we know that absolute value always makes something positive. This is impossible. It's impossible for an absolute value to equal something negative. So there are a couple ways that we could write this answer. One way is by saying no solution. A second way is a set that has nothing in it. We call that the empty set because there's nothing in it. The last symbol that means the exact same thing is that symbol right there, and that means the null set. So if you ever see an absolute value equal to a negative number, that is impossible, and you can write no solution, empty set, or null set. Great job today, Algebra 2. I'll see you next class period where we can talk and practice some more absolute value equations. Your next video, Unit A4, will be about absolute value again, but there'll be absolute value inequalities. I'll see you then.